welcome back once again to Chapter 23, Part 2, where we get to talk about the growth and development part of this chapter, which is going from fetus up into baby that is hopefully coming out healthy and whole. Let's go ahead and get into... Where am I going? I've forgotten my own driving. Alright, there we go. So, but I find this it's insanely fascinating, and especially when, if you do have kids, you know, which is completely up to you. I am totally down with, I hated it when I was younger and people were like, when are you having kids? It's like, when I darn well feel like it. Or if not, you know, completely optional, especially right now in this day and age. So anyway, the embryonic stage ends at the 8th week, and any major issues during this phase can lead to major malformations or malfunctions, like when I was talking about, of course, this was back in 168, and I know most of you didn't have that with me, but there is like Zika virus when people were pregnant, and this was before COVID, a couple of years before COVID, maybe around 2017, 2018. It was a big problem because it was being spread by mosquitoes, and we were afraid of it. Oops, sorry, Monty. We were afraid of it coming up into North America, but it was coming up through South America and Central America. And unfortunately, what happened is the women who were pregnant at the time got hit with Zika virus. They got over it fine. It just acted like a fever. But the problem is it would go in and start a major malformation of the baby, especially in the brain, and they would be born with brains that were completely underdeveloped and completely smooth, which I know there's a joke around on the internet. It's like, I'm smooth brain, but this is not a joke, and it was not any laughing matter, because now there's several children out there that they are forever, you know, mentally, you know, you sit there and say, oh, they're mentally handicapped. It's worse than that. It's bad. Anyway, look it up sometime. It's... Oof. Anyway, so those things like that, like the Zika virus I just talked about, are called tetragens. These are factors that can cause congenital malformations during fetal development, which can be drugs, viruses, radiation, even large amounts of the wrong vitamins, which is why prenatal structure has a period where it's called susceptible to tetragens, called a critical period. So yeah, there's a lot of things that can completely and utterly screw up pregnancies to the point where it doesn't even happen. It's just like naturally aborts. And there are things where the body just goes, yep, nope, bye. So radiation definitely being one of them. Like, I don't know how many of you watched a couple years back, HBO put out a mini-series on what happened in Chernobyl, and there was a couple of things that were definitely, and me being into radiation accidents, I kind of find that all kind of fascinating, even though it's strange to say, but nuclear radiation is actually one of the cleanest ways we can get energy. But we've turned our backs on it because of things like Chernobyl and 3 Mile Island. And then the gas, I know this is put on your tinfoil hat, but the gas and coal industries jumped on this and said, oh, dangerous, dangerous, dangerous. Yeah, if you're doing it on the cheap and not paying attention to things like the Soviets were. I mean, the whole reason Chernobyl fell is because they were doing it as cheaply as humanly possible without any safety checks. And they were trying to push the reactors to do stupid things with people who were undertrained and underqualified to do their jobs. So, but anyway, sad story. What happened was, there was a woman who was pregnant. Her husband was one of the firefighters that was first on the scene after Chernobyl blew its lid, and reactor 4 blew its lid. And they ran out thinking it was just a fire on the roof for whatever reason. No, they didn't realize that the entirety of the reactor had went right through the ceiling. And her husband and the rest of his firefighter squad perished due to intense radiation poisoning, because they literally picked up the graphite that got kicked out. Graphite's actually used as something as an in-between to help hold the rods in place without themselves getting damaged. You know, the uranium rods and whatnot. So anyway, one of them, even with a glove on, one of the firefighter gloves, picked up one of the freaking pieces of graphite and burnt his hand through it. Because he was just like, what is this? And went, ah, and dropped it. And he had huge 3rd-degree burns through the hand. Through a firefighting glove. So, yeah, it was crazy. So, unfortunately, she was pregnant. And at the time, she didn't really realize it. She was in, beginning pregnancy. Her husband and his entire squad was sent to the hospital. Their firefighting gear is still in the basement of that hospital in Pripyat, which is the ghost town that's outside of Chernobyl. And their stuff is still down there, and it's still psychotically radioactive to this day. You can actually go down there and look at it through the door. And you're only allowed to be down there for 5 minutes, and then you have to leave. And somebody will make you leave. So you can go look at it if you want. Not right now that we have Russia trying to invade Ukraine. But before that, you could. You could actually go in for, actually they were letting people in with clearance to go in and go check everything out and come back out again. So you could go check out Pripyat. It was actually safe for you to be in there for a bit. It wasn't, because a lot of the radiation settled down. Anyway, getting back to the story. Sorry, I'm dragging this out. I just find it all quite fascinating. So what happened is she snuck in. She bribed one of the nurses to sneak in and see her husband. Now keep in mind, they'd just come back. They were highly radioactive. Even if they were cleaned off, whatnot, and all their radioactive firefighting gear was dumped in the basement, they were still radioactive as all get out. And the whole squad ended up dying badly, because there's this weird moment where it's like, first they're sick, they're throwing up, they're everything's coming out every end. And then there's a weird moment in radiation poisoning where you get better. It looks like you're miraculously recovered. You haven't. Your body's just like, and then you start basically disintegrating. Your white blood cells just explode, and you basically just start disintegrating. It's not pretty. And that's what happened to her husband. She bribed a nurse and was let in while they were having their recovery period, that period right before they explode. And and so they all thought they were getting better. They were all, sitting there in the hospital ward, all shooting the breeze and going, yeah, we'll be out in a couple of days. We'll be fine. So she got in, she gave her husband a hug. She lost after her husband died, and they had to be buried in lead coffins. The only thing she could have that wasn't radioactive left of her husband was his slippers that he was wearing in the hospital. And they were buried in super lead coffins because their bodies were still crazy radioactive. And she went through, I think, about 6 months of pregnancy and lost the baby because of all the radiation that was going on. And a lot of radiation problems happened all over Europe because of this. Heck, it even screwed up the grapes for wine. So, crazy. So anyway, remember, please do not try to run a nuclear power plant on a budget of nothing and then force the power plant to do weird things by people who are not trained to do the weird things with the power plant. And that's pretty much why Chernobyl went Chernobyl. 3 Mile Island did something else, but the crazy part is that was actually contained and nothing got out. Nothing really terribly happened. It was all contained, but it made everybody in the United States panic because this pretty much happened right after Chernobyl. And the news of Chernobyl was finally leaking because Russia didn't want to, even the Soviet Union, back then it was the Soviet Union, didn't want to admit that they had screwed up that badly. And it was coming out trickle by trickle. And a couple scientists blew the whistle and lost their lives because of it in the Soviet Union, because they said, I can't cover this up. The rest of the world deserves to know what's happening, why it's happening. It's because of what happened in Chernobyl. So it's a really interesting miniseries. They did take some liberties in some spots, but it pretty much shows blow by blow by blow what actually happened in Chernobyl. So HBO did a really good job. If you ever want an interesting miniseries to sit down and watch through, highly recommend the Chernobyl series. Like I said, there's a couple moments where it's like not quite on the nose, but they did well enough to definitely convey what the heck happened and explain it in terms that you can understand, which is kind of cool. So, question time. I love this one. Which one is a human embryo? Yeah, but it's going to surprise you which one it is. I mean, you can figure which one it isn't. But anyway, yeah, there comes a point in especially all life on Earth, even the ones like birds and whatnot, and even fish, that you cannot tell an embryo apart from other embryos. It is that hard to distinguish the two of them. And granted, I threw a silly one in right here. But anyway, because I'm silly like that. But, yeah. It's hard. If you put an elephant embryo next to a human embryo at a certain stage, you cannot tell them apart. At all. So, which one was the human embryo? It's C. C is the human embryo. Write down in the forums which one you thought it was first. Yeah. And a lot of people go for D. D is actually, I believe, a dog or a cat. I'm not positive, though. And we actually do all start with a little bit of a tail. We actually lose our tail. Darn. Although, having a tail would make wearing pants annoying. Anyway, just saying. Getting the tail holes. Can you imagine getting tail caught in doorways all the time? Ow. So maybe it's a good thing we don't have tails. Anyway. So, again, I'm just throwing this out here. Notice, like, we actually do come with gill slits. So we actually do have gill slits. We lose them, of course. We don't need gills. We're not fish. But, you know, we all start out looking insanely similar. Isn't that crazy? Same thing over here. Shark, lizard, chicken, pig, human. I mean, honestly, if you just had a lineup right here, yeah, you wouldn't go for shark. But, you know, it's a little hard to look at this and go, yeah, that's a human. Anyway, so the fetal stage begins at the end of the 8th week and lasts until birth. And like I said, we look like a little freaky alien until we get into actually looking like a freaking human. And even then, in some of the early stages, we look freaky deaky still. So, craziness. So it's interesting to see, yeah, like at 3 weeks, we don't even look, 4 weeks, we don't even look human. Crazy. So, why do we have a belly button? So a fetus does not use its lungs to oxygenate its blood, so where does it all come from? The oxygenated blood and nutrients come up through the placenta, through the umbilical cord or the umbilical vein, which enters the body through the umbilical ring, which becomes your belly button, up into the fetal liver. From there, about half the blood dumps into the liver, and the rest of it goes up into the heart through the ductus venosus, which actually shuts after you're born. So, yeah, your heart's pumping, but your lungs, it's not really going to your lungs. Your lungs are just hanging out and getting extra time to develop and whatnot, which, you know, some preemies really need help with because they actually, when they're born, their lungs really do not work because they're not making any pulmonary surfactant to breathe because their lungs are extremely underdeveloped, which is why preemies, we have to be very careful with them and put them in these, you know, of course, those incubator boxes that help them adjust and grow to life outside of the womb because they're way too early. And the crazy part is the doctor that developed those boxes to save preemie babies, was actually shut down by he couldn't find the funds to show that his invention actually saved premature babies' lives. So what he did is he actually kind of made it a carnival thing. So the first place where preemies were shown to be put in these incubator boxes, and so that way they could survive outside the womb and live and grow up into healthy babies, they were part of a sideshow carnival act to make money to help him promote his invention. So yeah, you could go literally to New York City, go down to the docks where hold on. My brain keeps kicking out Carnegie Hall, and I keep going, that's not it, you moron. Coney Island. You could literally go to Coney Island and see premature babies in those incubators that doctor had invented to make money to then turn around and sell this technology to hospitals that were being stubborn about it. And he actually saved so many lives, and people actually came back and said, I was one of those preemie babies on Coney Island. So yeah, isn't it weird how we've been saving preemies, and how that incubator box that we've been building for that actually came from a doctor that nobody wanted to even put any money into, and so he went in and actually made it a sideshow attraction at Coney Island for people to come stare at the preemies in the boxes, and it saved many, many lives, and now it has gone on to being a major part of a NICU unit. So I just think it's weird where that technology came from. That it used to be. So yeah, preemies used to be sideshows, and people would pay to go see them, but it saved their lives. So weird. So anyway, FYI, ductus venosus is definitely a test question. And so are these. So, with blood dumped into the heart, it passed through an opening called the foramen ovale, test question, closes up at birth, which allows the blood to go from the left to the right atrium. Deoxygenated blood leaves through the ductus arteriosus. So it comes out here. And the ductus arteriosus, which goes back through the umbilical arteries, which goes back to pick into the placenta to pick up oxygen and nutrients again, which leads to basically these umbilical arteries going back actually has mixed blood. So we've got oxygen rich coming from mom, coming in up through the liver, dumping into the heart. And basically what's going on though is because it's kind of incomplete, it comes back down through and jumps up through, and we get some mixed blood. So it's not entirely perfect, but it works. And when Mother Nature has it working, Mother Nature's not going to mess with it, like photosynthesis. It works. Doesn't work well, but it works. So it works well enough. So anyway, so that's basically how fetal circulation comes with. Now, when birth, the labor process, which I'm going to have a fun time talking to you about my experience. So anyway, and everybody's experience is a little different. And like I said, as the same thing with the fed is best, I don't care if it's breastfed. I don't care if it's, bottle fed. Just feed the baby. Same thing with this. If you have to have a C-section, you're still giving birth, for the gosh sakes. Whatever gets the baby out alive, awesome. So I had, natural labor, so yay, that was, and I decided to do it without, any kind of pain meds, because A, I didn't want that big of a needle in my spine, and B, I wanted to see how much of a strong woman I am. Oh god, that was the dumbest, that was so dumb. Oh my god, it was so dumb. It was a little painful. Anyway, so, basically, this is estrogen is a major positive feedback loop in this. So there's 3 stages, but there's actually there's 3 stages right in labor. Labor is interesting. So your book doesn't go into it, and I'm kind of sad it doesn't. So stage 1, labor. Labor actually has 3 parts to it. Basically, your book says contractions increase in duration, frequency, and intensity, causing the cervix to dilate. And it does. It goes from about the size of a blueberry to the size of a freaking bagel. And then you get your kid out through that hole, which is insane. And then it goes back. That's the other thing. Our stuff is so elastic that it actually goes right back, a few weeks after birth. So FYI, anybody who's sitting there saying, oh yeah, there's those strange folks on the internet that sit there and say that, women have too much intimate relations with other people, it ruins them downstairs. No, honey. We can push out a baby and it goes right back to normal just fine. So, somebody's, penis is not going to ruin anything downstairs, I assure you. Anyway, and an adult woman. Thank you very much. So, thank you for coming to my TED Talk. Anyway, but basically what's going on right here is, so when you go into labor, and they warn you about this if you take some labor classes, which is really nice. First things first, it's actually helpful to move in the first stages of labor. So basically when you start having contractions and you go to the hospital and the doctor checks you and he goes, yep, you're pretty much, the baby's coming. The first thing you're going to do is you're going to want to move around as much as humanly possible. It's the only way to stave off those contractions. And what you do is you get your partner or whoever is coming with you to the hospital to do a counter pressure thing. It really helps because when a contraction starts, what you do is you walk up to a wall, put your hands on the wall with your back towards your partner, and they push 2 spots right above your hips. And it actually, when the contraction comes, if they push just right, it alleviates the contractions. And the only way to, and it really, really helps. So that helps with the first part. So the first part is you moving around, because moving as much as possible actually helps. And having somebody do the counterbalance thing on the back actually also helps. So highly recommend that. But there comes a point in stage 2 of the labor where you can't do this anymore. Your body actually will force you to shut down, which is actually interesting. So your body will actually be like, enough of this, you go nap. And this forces the woman's body to actually go to sleep. It's weird. And you're having contractions, so you're being woken up out of this weird thing that your body puts you through. The whole thing, this weird thing that your body puts you through. But basically you're forced to take a nap to basically build up enough energy for the delivery part, which is a whole bunch of fun. So, you kind of go sleepy and you kind of like nap on and off, on and off, on and off. And that napping part is where, you're building up energy to, go through delivery and whatnot. And it was weird. I remember falling asleep and kind of like vaguely waking up at the contraction and going right back to sleep, and vaguely waking up at the contraction and going right back to sleep, which was annoying because it's like you couldn't get straight sleep, but because these very annoying, very powerful contractions were running through my body. So then, when your body's had enough of that, it is time to move from labor and your cervix is ready to go into delivery. Now, all the while, nurses are coming in and checking on the dilation of your cervix, which, FYI, hurts, especially if you have tiny fingers. I had a nurse, no offense to her, she was a great nurse, but she had short fingers, and she'd shove it up there to check, and God, she had to push up there. And I assure you, at that point, you don't want anybody down in there messing with you. It's just... So anyway, delivery. I love how it makes it a mother pushes and the baby crowns and then exits the birth canal and enters the world. That makes it sound so easy. It's not. By the way, pushing is I'm not a coordinated person in the least, and they had to tie a couple of sheets together to make a rope because I was not pushing. They say push, you think you push. That is not how you push, apparently. And me being the out of it wacky woman that I am with no rhythm, that wasn't fun. So they had to get me to push while I pull. I had to pull back while they pulled, and that was actually getting me to push properly. So there is a reason why, if you see in ancient diagrams, in ancient Egypt, they actually had a birthing stool, which was kind of like this semicircular wooden stool that they'd sit under the mother, and the mother would squat on it, and she'd hold on to a rope that would come down from the ceiling of the house. And she would literally, when she was, birthing, she'd pull up, and that would help the baby come out, and the nurses would grab it on below. And, I don't see why we can't go back to that a little bit, because it kind of helped. Because it would probably help a lot more. We're actually designed to give birth in gravity, which is why we can't give birth in space. Yeah, there's no gravity to assist, so baby gets stuck. So anyway, just FYI. If you were planning on being the first person to give birth in space, I would not suggest it. Anyway, but the body comes out easy. The head's the problem. The head's just like, with it, it's like, the head goes out a little bit and then goes right back in, out a little bit, right back in. Trust me, there's nothing more annoying than that sensation ever in your life. That head going in and out, in and out, in and out, in and out, until you finally got it popped out. That's the hard part. That is the entire hard part of delivery, is getting the baby's head out of you. The body just slides on out. The head, on the other hand, it's like back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Oh, God, that was the most... It was like, could you take clamps and, like, suck the baby out? Which is a no-no. Don't do that. Forceps are not the baby's friend, because that can damage the neck and whatnot. And people used to do that, but it damages things, so don't, no. You just have to, unfortunately, push it out. When it gets out, it pops out. But the rest, trust me, once you get past the head, the baby just slides right out. It's like... But then the second part, stage 3, and the most annoying part, when the nurses come in and physically assault you. And they have to, but it's horrifying. You just pushed out a kid, you're exhausted, but now you got to get the placenta out, which is the expelling of the placenta and the umbilical cord, and the contractions continue to kick the placenta out too, because you got to get that bad boy out. And unfortunately, the nurses, to assist with this, come in and start smushing on your belly to smush on your uterus to push it out. And you just gave birth to a kid, you're already in pain, blood is gushing out of you like crazy, like, 9 months worth of missing your period is all about. Oh my God, guys. I mean, you just, and they're just pushing. Oh God, I wanted to punch some people. I just didn't have the energy to punch anybody, but boy, did I want to punch people. And then finally my placenta popped out, which, by the way, the placenta looks like a meat pancake. It really does. It's big meat pancake looking thing. I wanted to take it home because you actually can take it home. And I've been told that if you cook it, it tastes like filet mignon. And I wanted to do that because I'm weird. And I know you're probably at home going, but yeah, I'm that weird. I won't wear baculum earrings, but I will. I wanted to eat my placenta. I grew it. It's mine. I mean, animals in the wild do it, that's how the mother gets its energy back, because that's a lot of nutrients right there in the placenta. I think it's kind of a waste. You actually can then send it off and get it dehydrated and crushed and put into pills, and you can take the pills instead. But my husband wouldn't go get a Tupperware thing to go get the freaking... the doctors are like, well, you need to have Tupperware and then you can bring it home. And I'm just like, nobody told me that beforehand. So FYI, if you're one of those people that are giving birth and you want to eat your placenta, bring some Tupperware, and bring a big Tupperware. It's a big meat pancake. And it's very vascular. You can see all the vascularization over it. It's actually really interesting to look at. It was too bad I was absolutely, utterly exhausted for being in labor for 12 hours from midnight until I gave birth to him at 11 in the morning. And it was a pain, literally, and I was exhausted. And I would have looked at it deeper and stared at it more, but unfortunately I was like, oh, that's so cool, it looks like a meat pancake. And I was like, can I go to sleep now? Anyway, lactation, I already complained about this, but, I'm going to complain about some other parts now. In the form of education, I will now complain. So anyway, lactation is a physiological process. It's also a mental process. Mammary glands secrete milk. This is where we get prolactin, stimulates milk production. We talked about these guys back at the beginning of the semester. Remember that? Yeah? Okay. So, released in response to suckling, stress, sleep, and sexual intercourse. Although, FYI, after you have a kid, you are not interested in that. So, if you are, good for you, I guess. But watch out, you can get easily pregnant right again. Oxytocin stimulates letdown. You know what? Babies just, I don't know what it is. This is a psychic power right here. I don't care what the book says. I've been through that. I assure you, your baby will look at you from across the room, and all of a sudden your eyes meet and your breasts just let down milk. It is the weirdest feeling in God's green earth. It is weird. It is weird. So basically the baby is like, I'm hungry, and zunk, and then all of a sudden you go, and it's, oh. They say a tingling of the breast may occur corresponding to contractions in the milk duct. It is not tingling. It is weird. Tingling doesn't even remotely touch the strangest sensation ever that you get when you just let loose down there. It is weird. But, on the other hand, it actually causes the uterus to contract, seal the blood vessels, shrink in size, and heal. So, letting milk actually let down actually helps heal your uterus coming back to its original size pre-baby. So, yeah, again, I'm sorry, but boy parts are not going to stretch out girl parts when it goes right back to normal after kicking out a kid. So, anyway. So lactation, formation of secretion of breast milk from pregnant mothers, controlled by hormones, and I swear psychic powers from your baby. And prolactin, again, the hormone. Initially, breasts secrete a thin yellowish fluid called colostrum. And the baby only needs to eat like a very little bit of this. So like right off the bat, they really do push trying to get the baby latched on. Me and Wesley had major problems because, like I said, I have nipples that decide to go halfway the opposite way of what they should. Thanks, Grandma. And Wesley had his frenulum up to the tip of his tongue until we figured out and we got that cut at the pediatrician's office, which was interesting. And so now he's not tongue-tied anymore. He's really not tongue-tied if you ever come up and talk to him now because he's 9. And so, yeah, the colostrum's just, it's interesting, and it's really important because it packs a huge punch, especially in getting the immune system over, because a lot of this is where a lot of the good stuff that's coming out of mom is being transferred to the baby, so therefore they have an immune system kind of like pre-ready to go, but they'll lose that after a while to develop their own. That's why vaccines come in big time when the baby's old enough. So colostrum's huge, which is why there is something to the camp of, breast milk is better, but at the same time, at this day and age, it doesn't matter anymore. Because we've simulated a lot of it with the exception of the immune system stuff. So bottle babies are just as well fed as, breastfed babies. And like I said, I had to pump because both me and Wesley were incompatible, but I was making a ton of milk. And when you pump, unfortunately, it also tells your body, oh yeah, you're really making milk. So I was actually putting out enough milk for 2 kids. And the funny part is I actually had a friend who was pregnant at the same time I did, and she was having problems with milk production. So I just gave her all my extra. Like, do you trust me? She's like, yeah, I trust you. I'm like, here's all my milk. So I'd give her half my milk production because Wesley was drinking a ton. He was fine. Her baby was still. So I basically breastfed technically 2 babies. So, but like I said earlier, last lecture, if your ducts get obstructed, that's pain. That is like putting a red hot poker in your breast. That is pain. There is nothing more painful than a stuffed up duct, milk glands. God, that hurt. That was pain. Anyway, now, postnatal period, after birth. So, you got your neonatal period. This is from birth to the end of the first 4 weeks. Baby basically has to do for itself what the mother's body was doing up till now. This is why sometimes you'll get jaundice babies, because the liver has to sit there and go, oh, it's my turn now. And the kidneys, so they actually have to turn on and go, oh, I've got to do it. And so, like Wesley, I've got several pictures of him right after birth. He was yellow as yellow could be, because his kidneys and his liver had to wake up and go, oh, yeah, me now, ha ha ha. And that's normal. Jaundice babies happen a lot. It's because, like I said, a lot of the organs that need to turn on suddenly need to go, oh, it's me now. The mom's not doing it for me anymore. And like I said, the kidneys, the liver, and the lungs are basically 3 of those that have to wake up and go, oh, I'm on. And then and he turned back to a normal baby color until I fed him carrots until he turned orange from eating all the little carrots. So infancy, this is basically end of first 4 weeks to 1 year. Rapid growth, triples in weight. Teeth appear. Oh boy, they appear. Grab objects. Oh boy, they grab. Sit, crawl. And by the way, they have Spider-Man abilities. I don't know what it is. Babies have the stickiest hands, so whatever they grab, they grab. So just watch out. If somebody says, yeah, watch out, baby, this baby will grab. That baby will grab. Don't, they... Alright, so anyway. Childhood, end of the first year until puberty, secondary teeth, bladder control, speaking, learning, reading, writing. It's where my 9-year-old is right now. Bladder control is definitely something that's rather important. Although every kid does it differently. Like, I had a huge time potty training my son. Urinating, he has no problems with. It was pooping, and he still has poop denial. He's working through it, thank God. But when I was first potty training him, he would refuse to acknowledge he was pooping. He would squat down in a corner and go, and I'd be like, are you pooping? Go to the toilet. And he was just like, no, I'm not pooping. He was pooping. He hates pooping. He's gotten so much better now, but we've had to, lots of work with my pediatrician. Anyway, so adolescence from puberty to adulthood, hormones change the body, growth spurts, secondary sex characteristics, a lot of weird thoughts. And I don't mean, I just mean, you go through a lot of changes. Like I said, I don't know how middle school teachers do it. Praise them. Anyway, adulthood, from adolescence to old age, we peak around 18 to 20s, and from there, it's all downhill. And your book actually kind of says that. Yay! So anyway, sentience, which is the process of growing old, results of normal wear and tear in the body and its systems over years, and unfortunately, it's degenerative until you die. So I hope you all live a very long life. Now, there's a difference actually between aging. There's passive aging and active aging. So passive aging is basically the result of generic deteriorative processes like oxidation. Like I said, oxygen is crazy enough because it used to be called fire air. And it's weird because we breathe it and we need it. And it does take a toll on us, despite the fact that without it, we die. Crazy, I know. Molecular disruption, genetic transcription faults, mechanical damage, other natural processes, standing next to nuclear reactors when they go off. Don't do that. It caused a deterioration in biological systems. Active aging, this actually begins before birth, as cells that are pre-programmed to die go through apoptosis and die because we've made too many of them, like I was talking about, with my 168 crew. I was talking about, how we're actually born with way more neurons than we need, and we have a lot of redundancies, which is a good thing because we want more than we need, certainly, but we have to then, reduce size, so there's a lot of cells that go through apoptosis, and, they actually are programmed to die, and this happens in your body all the time. So we sometimes make more than we need, basically say, oh, you're redundant, bye, and it goes, okay, and it dies. So that's the difference between passive aging and active aging. And again, he goes through all of this as well in his reproductive system, pregnancy and development, except with not so much the stories, because Hank is a guy. No offense, guys. Be thankful you're not. Pregnancy is something, it's interesting, it's fascinating. It was definitely a wild ride from beginning to end for me, especially since Wesley and unfortunately, my second pregnancy did not allow me to eat. My body does not want me to eat for 9 months. They had to put me on extreme medications for Wesley, and thankfully it all turned out well in the end, but they couldn't do it for the second one, and that's actually how I lost the baby. Because my system, for whatever reason, even though my system's great for giving birth and whatnot, it doesn't let me eat. Literally from beginning to end for 9 months, my body will not let me eat. And that's not exactly great when you're trying to grow a second human inside of you. It's like, I'm sorry, but I need food. So yeah, that's why, unfortunately, as much as I wanted 2 kids, I could only have 1 and bring it safely to term because my body did not want me to do it a second time, which sucks. Because a lot of us that, lose pregnancies and whatnot, we wanted that pregnancy very much. So, sometimes it's not meant to be. Anyway, this is really good. This one's a TED one, and it actually is Conceptions to Birth, which is basically they took a whole bunch of really awesome pictures of babies developing inside, and they went from basically fertilization on up, and it's actually really fascinating what babies do inside while they're developing, which my son used to pretend he was a soccer star because he was constantly kicking. His feet never stopped moving inside my womb. Once he realized he had feet, those things were moving 24/7 inside my... And then when his feet were pointing down, God, he was kicking me in the freaking... Why did they put the uterus on top of the urinary bladder? I do not know. But anyway, this is really cool. Highly recommend watching just because it's cool. With that said, that's it. There you go. We just did pregnancy, birth, and growing up in a nutshell. And now we're on to the last chapter of the semester. You've made it, guys. So next time we talk, we're going to be talking about chapter 24, which is on genetics and genomics. So until then, have a good one, and I'll see you in a week. Bye!